أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum, my dear sisters, and welcome. My topic for discussion today is the international solution for Muslim women. Her suffering and her solutions, inshallah, is what I'd like to talk about. And in the first part, I'll highlight her suffering. And inshallah, in the second, I will go on to talk about the solutions. Sisters, I would have been honoured to stand here today and highlight the achievements, the Muslim women's achievements. I would have been honoured to speak about the Muslim woman's accomplishments, to speak of her value, to speak of her great status and her great role in life and in society. But living in Britain, we're not always aware of the lives that Muslim women have in the Muslim world. Nor can we ever imagine, for our lives are so very different. For those who may have originated from countries in the Muslim lands, even then we cannot truly grasp the situation of Muslim women in the Muslim world today. Every single sister will have her own story to tell, of her own suffering and struggles on a daily basis. So whether we look to Saudi Arabia, to Pakistan, to Malaysia, to Yemen, to Syria, to Bangladesh, to Indonesia, to Somalia, or otherwise, there are hardships that we can't even imagine. We saw, sisters, how one man in Tunisia, Muhammad Bouazizi, he was fed up of life, living in poverty, facing lots of hardships, extreme hardships. He set himself on fire. Who would have known that this one event would have ignited the whole of the Middle East and the whole of North Africa? I want to share with you, sisters, what our sisters are going through in these regions. I recently came across a video in which a brother was speaking of a letter that has been recently leaked from one of the prisons in Syria. And sisters, in this prison in Syria, there's a sister who has written a letter, and in that she wrote a poem. And I want to share a few lines of that poem with you, which talks about her suffering. And brace yourself, sisters, because it broke my heart when I read this. She says, "Oh brothers, oh fathers, oh Muslims, our insides and our intestines are being filled with the disgusting men and their tyrant sons. Bombard the walls on top of us. What oppression and what shame we are living in. We called upon you with our loudest calls, and no one heard us or helped us. Tear down these prisons and do not think about us, since we do not wish to give birth to what is inside us now. This is your sister, the devout and the honourful." Only this week, there was a report of a sister who escaped from Homs to Lebanon, and she recalls her story of how her 12-year-old son was killed by having his throat slit, and how she heard screams, the mother of this child, she heard screams of her child, but she couldn't do anything. The uprisings have become a starting point for many women, not only the women in Syria. And this was a starting point for women to come out and make their voices heard. A starting point, even though they faced the brunt of violence at the hands of armies, at the hands of police, at the hands of government thugs, yet it didn't stop them. They still came out. But the question is, why? What are things like for these women on a daily basis that they feel the need to come out? They feel the need to come out and demonstrate. They feel the need to come out in Egypt, in Yemen, in Bahrain, in Syria, and all the other countries that we hear of, despite being attacked and threatened, as they did in Libya, despite being shot by snipers in Syria, and despite, and believe it or not, sisters, despite being forced to have virginity tests in Tahrir Square in Egypt. What makes these sisters still come out? The truth is, sisters, the sisters in the Muslim world, they are sick and tired of their lives. They are tired of how they are treated. They are tired of how they are disrespected. They are tired of not having access to education. They are tired of not having the right to elect a just ruler. Some in the name of implementing Islam, and some due to the effects of colonialism in their lands. And inshallah, I'd like to give you some hardcore facts, because that's me saying that. But let's look to some studies, inshallah, which really prove the point. Did you know, sisters, when it comes to employment, that the Middle East is the region with the highest rate of unemployment globally? They have a statistics of 10.3% unemployment compared to 6.2% globally. And further on, a study by the Global Employment Trends in 2001 stated that it is even more dramatic when you look at the youth, because the unemployment rate for the segment of population up to the age of 25 is as high as 40%. 40% unemployment up to the age of 25 in the Middle East alone. When you look at literacy, you'd think, okay, things are moving on. Maybe, access to education is more widely available. No, we're wrong. Studies based by Alesco, a Tunis-based organization, found that nearly 1 in 3 people in the Arab world is actually illiterate. And nearly half of all women in the region are illiterate. And this is a study conducted in 2008. If you look at Pakistan, the literacy rate in Pakistan is hovering about 30%. Just 30% for the whole nation. And if you actually make that comparison to the tribal areas in Pakistan, the literacy rate is 15%, with women, the rate being only 5%. If you go to health and you look at some, what was healthcare like in the Muslim lands, if you look to Yemen, the multiple indicators cluster survey conducted by the Ministry of Public Health and Population in September 2006 found that 25% of children between the age of 2 and 9 are affected with at least one type of disability. 25%, having a disability. According to a survey in 2011 by Trust Law, a legal news service run by Thomson Reuters Foundation, found that 3 out of the 5 most dangerous countries for women are Muslim majority countries. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia being included in them. Another survey, according to the National Family Council in Jordan, reported in 2005 that 83% of Jordanian women approve of wife beating if the woman cheats on her husband. And these are attitudes of women I'm talking about, not of men, 60% of women approve of wife beating in cases where the wife burns a meal that she's cooking. So if you burn your food, 60% of the women in Jordan, according to this study in 2005, thought it was okay for your husband to beat you. 52% approve of wife beating in cases where she's refused to follow her husband's orders. And this just shows you the kind of attitudes and the kind of behavior in the Muslim lands. If you look at divorce, sisters, the number of divorces is increasing in Saudi Arabia. In a study conducted in 2011, it found that that year, nearly 62% of marriages ended in divorce. 62% of all marriages in that year. If you look at violence, sisters, and you look to Bangladesh, a report stated that a total of 6,616 women fell victim to repression across the country. Of them, 1,014 were victims of stalking, 96 were killed after rape, 38 died after being set on fire, and 81 were victims of acid burning, and 2 died following those attacks. 6,616 in 1 year in Bangladesh, one country. If you look to Iran, another study conducted in 2006 found that 66% of Iranian women at the beginning of their marriage had been at least physically abused once. And what kind of abuse are we talking about? The study found biting, bondage, imprisonment in their own home, scratching, hair pulling, and even starving. I'm ashamed to talk about this. It's almost like I'm talking about an animal. If you look at rape and child abuse statistics, did you know, sisters, in 2011, according to the UN bodies list for child trafficking cases, which country came out tops? Indonesia. And Indonesia being the country which has the biggest Muslim population in the world. In Pakistan, it's reported that 3 out of the 4 women in prison under hudud laws are rape victims. And this is the reason for this is because rape is equated with zina. And according to Pakistani law, you have to provide 4 male witnesses to prove that you've actually been raped. But this is, almost impossible in many cases. But because the woman has come forward to report the rape, it's almost like she's confessing to having intercourse outside of marriage, and as a consequence, she's treated as somebody who's committed adultery and put in prison, even though she's actually a rape victim. If you look at sexual harassment, sisters, according to a survey in 2008 by the Egyptian Centre for Women's Rights, it found that 83% of native Egyptian women and 98% of women visiting from abroad have experienced some form of sexual harassment. And more than half of the Egyptian women reported being molested every single day. And contrary to popular belief, you'd think, isn't it, the sisters being molested, you might think, some people may think, that maybe they don't cover, maybe they were asking for it, maybe they were being lucrative in their behaviour. In actual fact, sisters, what this centre found, that most of the victims were actually in hijab. Honour killings, another illness that's unfortunately affecting us as a Muslim population. And many women's groups in the Middle East and Southwest Asia suspect that the victims are at least 4 times the reported number of 5,000 deaths a year, and that was according to a report by the UN in 2010. Now, if you times that figure by 4 times what, you expect 20,000 cases of honour killings in 1 year. According to surveys regarding poverty, sisters, we find that according to another survey, amongst the top 10 countries, Muslim countries hold 6 of those positions, countries including Nigeria, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and India. And this week I was reading an article on Bangladesh, and it spoke about how there was an area called Dolakdia, and this is an area which has one of the largest brothels in the world, containing 1,600 women in a village, a whole village basically in Bangladesh, which is like one of the largest brothels, which is visited by 3,000 men every single day. And in 2005, according to a humanitarian organisation, Terre des Hommes, they found the main reason for women entering this brothel was poverty, deception, abuse and coercion. If I was to ask you, sisters, what is it that you need to survive? What would you say? Some of you sitting here may say, well, you know what, I can't actually live without my iPhone. Yeah? Some of you might say, you know what, yeah, don't get me wrong, but my GHDs. Some of you may say, my money, my parents, yeah? Some of you say, you know what, I'm nothing without my motor. But these women that I'm speaking about, sisters, the areas that I'm speaking about, what do you think that they need to survive? What do you think their answer would be? Clean water, food, respect, a chance to live, a chance for survival, the reassurance that when their men leave home that day, they will return home that evening. They won't be abducted or murdered. It can be clearly seen by all these reports, and there's many, many more, that women are subjected to violence, to harassment, to rape, and all forms of abuse. They have no or limited access to education. And in those nations where she does have access to education, there may be hijab bans, such as in Tunisia, where a hijab ban has been enforced since 1981. So women in Tunisia, if they want access to higher education, they have to take off their hijab. She has no proper health care, or she can't afford it, as there's unemployment. People are struggling to survive. And with the availability of internet and the cheap usage of internet in the Muslim countries, unfortunately, sisters, pornography, the use of pornography is on the rise in the Muslim lands. And in actual fact, the Muslim lands are one of some of the highest users of certain websites containing pornography. With no job and no money, people can't afford marriage. And as a consequence, they resort to haram. And again, because of the kind of mindset that this creates, the Muslim woman is harassed and she's abused. Muslim women want change today. Muslim women want a better system of life. They want security, they want stability, they want to be financially better off, they want adequate healthcare, they want access to education. They've had enough of governments who have stood back and watched them being humiliated. They have had enough, sisters, of not having a voice, of not being able to vote or participate in society. They've had enough of not having fair trials. These are the same governments that I'm talking about, sisters, that they're standing up against, that have allowed Afia Siddiqui to be gang raped over and over and over again without a fair trial. These are the same government, sisters, that attacked an all-female peaceful demonstration, a peaceful protest in Syria, where snipers shot at the women. A peaceful demonstration in Syria. Many died. These are the same governments that watched live on media when Iman al-Obaidi reported she was being gang raped by Gaddafi troops and did nothing. So it's a natural consequence, sisters, therefore, that women from these nations are calling for a change. But what change exactly are these women calling for? And that's the question. We've seen these nations being reported on by news channels, by radio programs, across the internet, and all sorts of media. And there's much speculation about what exactly these women are calling for. Some say they're calling for democracy. That's what the people want. They want democracy. They want to have the same rights that women in the West enjoy, and that's what they want. That's what they're calling for. Others say, no, you know what, they just want representation in their governments in their own countries. They want to become MPs and have access to that. And some will further go on to say, you know what, they're sick of following Islam. They want Islam not to be a part of their life anymore. They want to be freed from the shackles of Islam that is enforced upon them by men in their countries. So what exactly then, sisters, are these women calling for? The millions that came out onto the streets of Tahrir Square in Egypt, the many that came out in Sana'a in Yemen, the ones who joined deadly protests in Syria, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, what they chant is they want a change in government. They want a change in the system, and they want a change in the oppression that they're facing. Surely, sisters, they don't want anything that is different that we want as women, for ourselves and for our families. We hear that they're calling for freedom. But what does freedom mean if you live in Saudi Arabia? What does freedom mean if you live in Syria or if you live in Bahrain? The right to an education? The right to drive? The right to practice Islam without being persecuted or your men being abducted by the Secret Service? If these women wanted secular freedoms, we would have seen them abandoning their jilbabs, and we would have seen them abandoning their khimars, yet we didn't see this. If they wanted Western liberal values, we would have heard them calling for this, yet we hear them chanting, Ya Allah, Malna Giruk, Ya Allah, oh Allah, only you, oh Allah. And we hear them chanting, Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest. If it was Islam that was tying them down, sisters, we would have seen them leave Islam in masses, yet we didn't see this. If you look at the demonstrations, if you look at the videos, what do you see, sisters? Do you see nationalistic flags? Do you see the Sunni and the Shia having separate demonstrations? Do you see these sisters promoting different political parties and different people? No, you see the whole of the Ummah, all of them, all of these women from different walks of life, all coming together. All of them, one call, the call for Islam, the call for change, the call for the Ummah uniting. You just need to take a look at YouTube, sisters. You need to take a look at the Arabic channels and for the live video messages coming out of those lands to get an idea, a real idea about what these women are calling for, what they want, and not necessarily rely on Western media outlets like the BBC and so on and so forth, because they will only broadcast what they want to broadcast. They are not going to broadcast an uprising for Islam. They're not going to broadcast that Muslim women want Islam. A Gallup survey, just to back up what I've said, just to prove that this is actually what Muslim women want. A Gallup survey from 2006, it conducted 1,000 face-to-face interviews in countries including Egypt, Iran, Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And they found that most Muslim women wanted the right to vote freely, to drive on their own, to work outside the home, and to undertake leadership roles within their society. And that they acknowledged that women in the West had more rights than them, but they didn't want their own societies to adopt Western values. The survey concluded that Muslim women tended to regard Western culture as morally corrupt and obsessed with sex, drugs and rock and roll. Another survey, sisters, the Maryland polls in 2007, rigorously conducted face-to-face interviews with 4,384 Muslims. And this was between December 2006 and February 2007. including 1,000 Moroccans, 1,000 Egyptians, 1,243 Pakistanis, and 1,141 Indonesians, revealed what? That 65.2% of the people interviewed, almost 2/3 of the population of people interviewed, wanted to unify all Islamic countries into a single Islamic state, including 49% of moderate Indonesian Muslims. Yeah, so 49% of moderate Indonesian Muslims, yet the foundings were 2/3 in favour of this. What this proves, sisters, is that these sisters in the Muslim lands want to live by Islam. Despite the attempts of the West to distance the Muslim woman from her Islamic identity, and despite the rise of feminist groups across the Muslim world, Muslim women are regaining awareness that only Islam can return their honour, and only Islam can return their rights, and they remain firm in their desire to see a return of Islam. And this is a direct result of seeing the failure of capitalism and democracy, dictatorships and military rules in their nations. They wish to return to the time when the woman was respected in society. They wish to return to a time when they are known as the Izzah of Islam, the honour of Islam. They have seen the result of their lands being colonized time and time again. They have seen drone attacks. They have seen sanctions. They have seen ground troops to secure Western interests. They have seen the result of Western culture upon their youth, and how it has completely corrupted their societies. The Muslim woman today, sisters, wants to return to the time when she was respected for her knowledge, when she was an active part of society. This was possible, how? By the application of Islam in society, where the rules and laws, the mindset, it all ensured that the woman was treated with respect and honour. And she was considered the honour as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her that status. They want to have an accountable government and a ruler who will grant them their rights and will give them security and protection. Sisters, let me give you an insight into what I am talking about. What accountable rulers am I talking about? I'm not talking about the rulers that you see in the Muslim lands today, sisters. I'm not talking about the ones who usurp the lands of the resources and they steal from their people. I'm not talking about the ones who stand and watch their women being dishonoured. I'm talking about rulers who fear Allah, rulers who Allah loves, and rulers who the Ummah loved, and they loved their Ummah. Let me tell you, sisters, about Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. There was a time, I'm not going to go into all of his life, there's just so much I could talk about, but I just want to give you an example, sisters, and for me, it really hit the nail on the head. There was a time during Umar ibn al-Khattab's reign when he was the leader of the Muslims, the Amir. And there was a severe drought during that time, and there was famine, sisters. And during one time during this period, some ghee and some yogurt came to the market. So Umar radiallahu anh, his slave went to the market and he brought this for 40 dirhams. And he came and he presented this to Umar radiallahu anh, being the leader of the Muslims. And he said, "Oh, Umir al-Mu'mineen, some yogurt and some ghee came to the market and I brought them for you for 40 dirhams. And what was Umar ibn al-Khattab's response, my sisters? Bearing in mind he's the leader at the time, that is too expensive. That is too expensive. Give them in charity, for I do not want to eat something extravagant. How could I care for the people properly if I do not feel what they feel?" Subhanallah. This is the leader of the Muslims saying, how can I eat ghee and yogurt whilst my people are suffering because of drought and famine? Yeah? And what do you see in the Muslim lands today, sisters? What do you see the rulers doing? Yeah? They have no worry and no bother and no care that people are suffering. People are dying from poverty. People are dying from not having clean water. And yet here we have a ruler, a true Islamic ruler, sisters, who gave up something small, a small luxury like a bit of ghee and some yogurt. Why? Because the people that he was responsible over didn't have that luxury. He wanted to feel their suffering. He wanted to feel their pain. He felt the accountability. I've got another example, sister, of the life of Umar ibn al-Khattab, just to show his mindset of how he used to think. He said to a man who was thinking of divorcing his wife, that why do you want to divorce her? And the man said, I don't love her. What did Umar ibn al-Khattab say to that? He said, must every house be built on love? What about loyalty and appreciation? Compare this, sisters, to what we see in Saudi Arabia today, supposedly one of the richest nations. It's got one of the highest rates of divorce in the world. Why? Because men who have money have the ability to marry and remarry and marry and divorce and remarry and so on and so forth, and it goes on. Subhanallah. Without the care or concern of what effect this will have on these women, without the care or concern of what will happen with these broken marriages, what about the children resulting from these marriages, what about the impact that this will have on their society? Such is the effect of a woman being seen as a commodity or even a nuisance, as one report stated, where it stated that many divorces in Saudi Arabia took place during the Eid period because of expenses, because their husbands thought that they were spending too much money on Eid. Subhanallah. I'll give you another example, because sometimes people say, yeah, that's all right, that was the time of the Khulafa Rashideen, the four rightly guided caliphs. What about after that? I'll give you another example, sisters. And this example is at the time of the Abbasid Khalif, Al-Ma'mun. And it is narrated, sisters, that he used to personally sit in the court for grievances on a Sunday, personally himself. And one day, a woman in rags confronted him and complained that her land had been taken away from her. Her land had been seized. And he asked her, "Against whom do you lodge a complaint?" And she replied, "The one standing by your side, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, Al-Abbas, who was the son of the Amir al-Mu'mineen." So basically she was complaining against the son of the Amir. What did the leader do? Did he tell her to shut up because she was a woman? Did he say, you know what, I ain't got time for this? No, he didn't. What did he say? He said to his Qadi, the judge at the time, "Arrange a meeting between her and him in my presence." And at this meeting, when the woman raised her voice, sisters, and one of the attendants in this meeting reprimanded her, Al-Ma'mun said, "Leave her, for surely she is speaking, it is the truth which is making her speak, and falsehood which is causing him to be silent," meaning his son. And he ordered that her land be returned to her. Thus clearly demonstrating she had access to the leader, despite being a woman. Her value and her worth was the same as a man when it came to grievances and justice. This was the accountability of the leader at that time. He didn't pass judgment in favour of the man and didn't listen to her because she was a woman. Unlike the Muslim lands today, sisters, no rights, no voice, no justice. We've seen so many examples of women being stoned to death in Nigeria and other countries because of apparent adultery cases, where the men get off scot-free. We've seen tashaddud punishments in Pakistan, where a woman has apparently dishonoured herself and her family. The men go scot-free. The Muslim woman, subhanallah, was granted so many things in Islam, and this is what Muslim women have come back to acknowledge and therefore call for. These rights include the right to own, the right to inheritance, the right to marry whom she wishes, the right to work, the right to food, clothing and shelter just like a man, the right to health care, the right to education, the right to take an active part in society, the right to elect a ruler. So to conclude my talk, inshallah, sisters, today, despite the fact that Muslim women were given rights over 1400 years ago, many which the Western woman is still fighting for, despite the fact that the state was destroyed over 88 years ago, remnants of this system still remain in society today. That culture that is reinforced still remains amongst the Muslim lands, and they call for this return. It is this system, sisters, that gives the rights to the woman and the respect to the woman. And it is this system that ensures the correct concepts are passed through the education system and forbids all incorrect concepts that affect society. It is this system, sisters, that will eradicate immorality and ensure that the correct viewpoint about a woman is built. You will not find a woman in an Islamic state, sisters, using her body to sell products. You will not see a woman disrespected and degraded and dishonoured in that way in an Islamic society. She will be somebody who's not been seen at the bottom of the society. Rather, she will be someone who will be a full member of society, as demonstrated at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Khalifs after that. So what is required then for this change, sisters? Well, what is really apparent with all of this, sisters, is the fact that it was the system of Islam that enabled all of this to take place, without which the woman could not have the rights that she enjoyed at that time. We have all of these rights today, sisters. We have all of these rights that Islam gave us over 1400 years ago. But we have no system to enforce these rights. We have no system to put these rights in place. And this is why, sisters, we see the Muslim woman in the state that she is in today, despite having these rights given to her over 1400 years ago. Therefore, sisters, it is of paramount importance that in order to give the woman her due right, we re-establish this system, which not only gives the woman her due right, but it is the only system that can. We have seen all around the world, sisters, nations where man-made systems are prevalent and where women are looked at as commodities and nothing more than objects to be used and abused. We see these nations with some of the highest rates of domestic abuse and violence, highest rates of teenage pregnancies, and so on and so forth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the woman and the man a best system to live by and to govern their affairs by, and granted them rights and given them a system to live in peace and harmony. And not only that, not only do we have peace and harmony in society by living according to this system, we also pave the way to Jannah, inshallah, by following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Nisa, verse 65, "But know by your Lord, they will not truly believe until they make you, O Muhammad, judge concerning that over which they dispute amongst themselves, and then find within themselves no discomfort from what you have judged, and submit in full submission." So what can we do to help this international call? What can we do to help our sisters in the Muslim lands? What can we do to remove their suffering, sisters? We need to unite with their call, first and foremost. We need to raise awareness for what is happening. We need to highlight the exact reality of Muslim women in the Muslim world so people feel the problem. We need to attend demonstrations accounting the rulers and tell them they can't get away with what they're doing in the Muslim lands. We need to write to newspapers. We need to ring into radio programs. We need to write letters. We need to contact all those people who are of influence, and we need to make our voice heard. We need to learn about democracy, feminism, liberalism, and all of the other isms that are associated with this, that has not managed to secure the rights of Muslim women, that has done nothing for them, despite many people calling for this. We need to learn about the vast history of the Muslim sisters, and we need to look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, how he established Islam, and about how he gave rights to Muslim women. We need to highlight the solutions from Islam. How exactly do we deal with problems from Islam, such as poverty and abuse? And we need to bring to the surface the correct role of a Muslim woman in Islam and highlight this importance once again, removing all traces of the cultural and backward views of a woman that she is to be kept under manners or she is just a modern day slave. We need to carry these ideas through the dawah to Muslims and non-Muslims alike so that they can see that Islam has actually got something great to offer, that Islam is actually a viable alternative as a ruling force. We need to realize the impact that it has of actually creating general awareness and what this can lead to. Look at sisters, look at what happened in the Middle East, look at what happened in North Africa, the actions of one man, the talking amongst people, look at what happened, look at what it led to. And last but not least, sisters, we need to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for real change and put our practical efforts in and strive hard and pray, because surely success lies in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For those of us sitting here in the audience today who think that's just an ideal, you're talking about an ideal, it's unrealistic, it's not going to happen. Like I just said, sisters, was it not the actions of one man that set alight the whole of the Middle East and the whole of North Africa? Was it not the action, sister, of one man that led to the removal of Ben Ali, of Hosni Mubarak? And was it not the actions of one man that made a nation stand up to a tyrant like Gaddafi, who's murdered so many of his people? Was it not millions of people who have been demonstrating in Syria, sisters, that have led the revolution into its second year going? Was it not, sisters, for the pressure that we see people who are loyal to these kind of regimes in the armies deflect and stand up with the Ummah? Was it not, sisters, any different to what Rasulullah ﷺ did in his life? Was it not any different to the struggles and the sacrifice of the Sahaba and their persistence that we saw Islam to grow and to prosper to what we saw Islam become? This is no different. We have seen real change, and we have seen the fear being lifted off the people. We are promised victory by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to let go of all defeatist mentalities, and we need to arise like the Muslims in the Muslim world and warn. And we need to call for the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to work for the system of Islam, and we need to highlight the corruptness of capitalism and democracy and show that they have provided nothing for the Muslim woman. We need to show, sisters, and remind ourselves that Islam is a complete system ready for implementation, and that this system is the best way to live life for the whole of mankind, whether you're a man or a woman. I finish, inshallah, with an ayah of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in Surah Al-Imran, verse 160, if Allah helps you, none can overcome you. And if He forsakes you, who is there after Him that can help you? And in Allah alone, let the believers put their trust.
Shazia, for a very informative talk. We're going to go to question and answer now. You can either say a question out loud or write it down on a piece of paper and send it to the front, inshallah. If you guys need a couple of minutes, don't all rush at once. Go on, Zara.
You say that men in Muslim lands are dishonouring their wives and their women, and that they don't have value for them. But even if the Islamic State existed and it was re-established, how would this change the mindset of the men? They'd still hold the same view of women, but you just have an Islamic State, so how would this change the mindset of the men?
Okay, how to change the mindset of Muslim men. Yeah? Okay, inshallah. I think if you look to Muslim men today, and you look at the kind of surroundings that they're in, and you look at everything that is happening around them, the mindset that people have, even women, the mindset that they have about women, and men, the mindset that they have about women, it's something that didn't happen overnight. It's something that was created. Yeah? So whether you look to the education system, whether you look at the rights and honours, whether you look at the relationships, whether you look at the mindset that is being pushed in society, in every aspect, you find that a woman is viewed as basically somebody who's inferior. Yeah? So when you have a whole society where people think like that, naturally this is what happens. If you look at, employment in Britain, how long have people been fighting for rights and for women and equality for women in Britain? And yet you still find even today, women, when it comes to being paid, they're paid less. They're paid less compared to a man, even today. So all of this creates a mindset. When you look to the system of Islam, there's a number of things that will happen to create that mindset. The first and foremost is, how do you view a woman in the first place? In Islam, a woman is viewed as the honor. Why is she viewed as the honor? Yeah, it's because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Jannah lies at the feet of your mother. Okay, so now if every person in that society understands that paradise lies at the feet of a mother, yeah, and every woman has the potential to be a mother, or they have a mother, automatically you respect a woman. Not only that, the woman in Islam, in an Islamic system, she is considered the honor of the state. Okay? She's considered the actual honor of the state. So it doesn't matter if you're related to a man or not related to a man. If you're a woman in that society, you are the honor of every single man in that society. Now tell me, is it not the case that if your honor was under attack, you feel something straight away? You want to protect it. Straight away, you will feel bad if somebody said something bad about her, yeah? You would feel something if she was ridiculed. You would feel something if she was humiliated. You will feel something if she was abused. So a mindset is created in that society that the woman is the honor. Then on top of that, you have the education system in Islam, yeah? And with the education system in Islam, the correct mindset and the correct mentality will be pushed in society. Yeah? So through the education, all children in that society, all people going through that education system, and all circles of discussion will push this mentality. So what will be created, yeah, is anybody who doesn't have that mentality is actually an outcast in that society. Yeah? Not only that, you have rules and laws. Yeah? And the rules and laws in that society are there to protect the rights of women. So now when it comes to being abused, she has an actual system that she can access. She has a ruler. She has people who are in positions of governing, such as judges, which she can go to. So any dispute, any case where she is dishonored, any case where she is, made the subject of violence, any case where she is raped, or any case where anything like that, she has direct access straight away to all of this justice system, the laws, yeah, and people who enforce and implement those laws, so that she gets actual justice. Yeah. So you have all of these systems actually working together. Yeah, and on top of that, you have a social system where men and women are actually separated in society. So all of that encouragement that you get in this society, where people are actually thrown in and pushed together, yeah, to interact, to mix, to create that kind of environment, to agitate people's instincts so that they want to commit haram, that is completely taken away. Yeah? So all of these systems actually work together, and what it creates is, it creates a mindset where people start to view the Muslim woman in the right manner, in the manner in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants her to be viewed.
Just 2 points there.
Yeah?
You said about the fact that a woman can go to the courts and she'll have a system there to protect her.
Yeah.
Couldn't one argue that in this system we also have equality laws where they're trying to push equal pay and all of these things, where they've even got paternity leave and all this kind of stuff, so they're always trying to push equal laws even in this system. So what's different between this system and the Islamic system?
Okay, in terms of laws, yeah?
Yeah, like you can still go to the courts here and you've got police.
Okay, if you actually look at the legal system in Britain, one of the main things is that you access the law, you access the police once a crime has actually been committed. Yeah? So you already are raped before you access. You already are abused and then you access. You already are humiliated and then you access. Yeah? What I'm talking about is a system where first and foremost the mentality is built. Yeah? In this system, in this society, what is pushed is that you're an individual. You've got freedoms, do what you want. Yeah? Whether that's to a woman or otherwise. Then you have the laws. So if a man thinks it's his freedom to do what he likes and goes and interacts or pushes the boundaries, so to speak, with a woman, yeah, and happens to harass her or whatever, yeah, as far as he's concerned, he's acting according to his freedoms. He's acting according to whatever is pushed in the society, that do what you like, live life to the max. There are no boundaries. After that, a woman accesses the law system, and even then, if you actually look to the punishments. I remember a number of years ago reading a newspaper article, and it was describing the punishment for rape, and it was describing the punishment for throwing an empty packet of crisps out of a car window. Now, the man who threw the packet of crisps out of his car window, he got fined £1,300, and he also got a community sentence. Yeah, the man who raped the guy who raped a woman, he was fined £300. Would you call that justice? Would you call that something? It doesn't matter. It's not just about getting access. And even that access, when is that access in place? So when you look to the system of Islam, number one, the correct mentality is built. Number two, it is encouraged in the whole of the society. If the whole of the society knows that you're somebody who abuses women, you'll be looked down upon. You'll be shunned in society. You'll become an outcast in that society. And last but not least, you have the punishment system in place. So somebody like that who does that to a woman, he'll be punished, and he'll be punished publicly. So that creates a certain atmosphere where you find, and even if you look back to the Islamic system and the number of years that it ruled, you find very limited cases of these things happening. Yeah? Because that's the kind of mindset that is created in those societies. That in this society, because the woman isn't viewed correctly in the first place, she's used and viewed as a commodity. She's used like that everywhere. So whether it's a bar of chocolate or whether it's a car, you see a woman, most likely semi-naked, being used to push that. This is how they view a woman. This is how she's used. This is not something that will be encouraged or something that will be pushed in an Islamic society. So you're talking about two completely different systems.
I think you kind of answered my second point. It was just the fact that if men and women are segregated in an Islamic society, they've still got the same instincts to want to procreate and everything. So won't this cause sexual repression between the men and women? Like, would they sneak around and do these things as opposed to doing it publicly like they do here?
Okay. Yeah, that's what I mean. It goes back to the thing that there's three ways in a society to deal with this. Yeah. So it's what I said earlier. So, yeah.
What active role can Muslim women do in the West to help the Ummah and the Muslim countries?
What kind of what active role can we play? So it's like what I said towards the end of the talk, that there are a number of things that we can actually do as Muslim women obviously, alhamdulillah, you all took the time out to come today, where you may have learned something, it may have triggered some thought in your mind, taking this discussion to other people. So whether that's your friends, whether that's your family, whether that's people abroad that you know, family abroad, so on and so forth, discuss these issues, talk about what the real solutions are. Whether it's programs on TV that you can email in, you know, ringing into radio programs, writing something in a local newspaper, responding to articles on the internet, you know, blogging, so on and so forth. There's so many things, it's so vast what you can actually do as a Muslim woman. Things like, for example, we have the ability to demonstrate. Alhamdulillah, obviously this is something that's happening a lot in the Muslim lands, but also when leaders of these nations have come to Britain, there's been a number of demonstrations and protests to show that we here in Britain, you know, our call is one with the call of the Muslim women abroad. So participating in these kind of events, really making your voice heard. Obviously showing the fallacy of other man-made systems, showing how man-made laws don't work, showing how man-made systems have caused so many problems for the Muslim woman, where she is obviously in the state that she is today. So if you were to look at some statistics, and obviously because my talk today was about the Muslim women in the Muslim lands, I didn't talk much about the Muslim women in Britain or America, but if you were to look at statistics of Muslim women in America and Britain, you will find that women in these nations, you know, there's statistics which talk about them being raped every so many seconds. You know, a number of women being raped every so many seconds. Women who have the highest rate of domestic violence, it's in the Western nations. Why is this? Yeah, why? Because this system that people are living by in these nations, it encourages this. Yeah, it encourages when you tell someone you're free and then you try and, you know, tie them down. It doesn't work. Yeah, so showing this, showing how capitalism doesn't work, showing that democracy is a farce, that it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked in any of the nations. Why? If it had worked, we would have seen the results of that. It doesn't work, and also because we know straight out, isn't it? It's a man-made system. So discussing these ideas with people and showing this and showing how Islam is a viable alternative, showing Islam for what it truly is, showing how Islam has really granted the rights for Muslim women. And that's something that you can do. There's millions of examples that you can access of Muslim women throughout the period, from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam right the way to when the state was demolished, of how Muslim women were treated under that system, and to show that how this is the only true system that can give them their rights. Obviously, you can discuss with Muslims and non-Muslims, explaining, you know, and really discussing the plight of Muslim women in the Muslim land. So, like we did today, we spoke about Syria, we spoke about, you know, Pakistan, we spoke about all these different countries, and, you know, there's things happening there all the time, and the climate is changing, but you see so much. I mean, like, if you look at Africa, subhanAllah, how many people, how many women died on the Horn of Africa recently? You know, all these things. Why is that the case? Why is that allowed to happen when there's so many resources? Discussing these things, showing how this, you know, this is what's happening with Muslim women, and showing them that, you know what, we might be here in Britain, in the heart of kufr, we might be so distant, we may not be people who have the best understanding of Islam because of the lack of Arabic language, but our call is no different to the call that, you know, to their call, and to show that how we are still part of that Muslim ummah, and we feel their suffering even though we may be living our lives here in Britain. So there's a number of things that you can actually do, inshallah.
That's sister's question, then we'll go to that sister, inshallah.
I was just going to ask that, obviously a lot of this discussion has been about giving honour back to the Muslim woman, and in this country I think Muslim women are influenced negatively by democracy and, you know, the liberal Western viewpoint as well, in terms of the dress and everything else, and I was just wondering what your suggestions were on how to encourage sisters to take on the full hijab rather than, you know, following fashion and things. What is the correct way of approaching it?
Okay. I think, to be fair, I think that, you know, when you're discussing with people, unless a person understands the basis of what you're talking about, when you talk about a particular issue, yeah, it may not necessarily make sense. Okay, now what I mean by that is, if somebody doesn't have a love for Allah, if somebody doesn't know what it means to actually be Muslim, if somebody doesn't feel that they have a purpose in life, or any of that, then to try and say to them, you know what, sister, put on your hijab and your jilbab, they're going to think, you know what, go away, I don't want to know you. You know, it's because all you're trying to do is you're trying to get them to do one action. the other way to look at it is that as a Muslim woman, there is far more to being a Muslim woman than just wearing jilbab and himar. And I think that it's that mindset that we have to get over. We have to try and show that what actually is Islam. What does it actually mean to be a Muslim? Yeah. What does it mean to believe in Allah? Because you can have a belief of Allah in your heart that, oh yeah, you know, I believe in Allah. But what does Allah tell us about that belief? What does He want from us? And you know, we know in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He created man and jinn to worship Him. Yeah. So what is that worship? That worship comes in absolutely every action. So now, when we're studying, we worship Allah because we study in a manner according to Islam. When we work, we worship Allah because we do jobs which are halal for us as Muslim women. We behave and act in society according to Islam whenever we're conducting ourselves in that job. When it comes to our family life, we ensure that we apply all of the rules and laws in Islam. And this is something that you have to build in a sister. So it's like a child. Yeah? It's like a child. When you have a child, you will teach that child and you will, give that child a very sound, firm foundation. Anything you build on that foundation, inshallah, will never fall. If you now go to a sister who doesn't quite understand what it means to even be Muslim, and you actually try and have a discussion about, okay, well, you know what, this is what you must do, but it doesn't mean to say you don't discuss the Muslim woman's dress. It's important to have that discussion because it is something which is fardan upon a Muslim woman, so it's an important discussion. But I think in terms of an approach-wise, I think it's important to build a foundation in a sister first. And it may be that sister understands what you say from one discussion, and it was the missing link for her, and straight away she puts on jilbab and himar. As it was for me, it was something which took one discussion. I was in jilbab and himar the next day. But with other people, it may be that you have to give that discussion and that build that foundation until they've understood that. After that, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about jilbab, whether you're talking about fasting, whether you're talking about obeying an amir, whether you talk about doing dawah. All of these things are important, and in Islam, they will do all of it because they understand.
Are there any other questions? Yes, sister.
I just want to add, regarding the mindset of men to Muslim men to Muslim women, I think one of the reasons why they look at women as inferior is because of the lack of active role women play in society. And for example, there's a friend of mine. She said, "Why should I go out there and present myself behind, in front of the audience? She's dressed properly. She wears hijab, but then she's having this wrong mindset that if she's dressed properly, she shouldn't be out there. She should be staying at home. Well, that is actually something that should be worked on, the mindset of women. And also, if we let that happen, of course, things are not going to change. And as we know, not just collectively we try to change the situation, to correct something wrong in the society, but I think it takes a courage of one woman and inspire the woman around her as well, sort of like making one woman show. As we know, brothers and sisters are awliya as well. They're supporters to each other, and I find this is something that there's something wrong in the mindset. Like brothers, you take up the part of the brothers' welfare, and sisters just take up the sisters. And I think this is something that should be worked on.
Yeah, absolutely right, alhamdulillah. I'd like to come back on that, inshallah. I think if you look to society today, like leading on from what you're saying, is that people have defined roles for themselves. So even as a woman, in the West, a lot of it is about competition with a man and trying to make herself an equal to a man, by the definition of what that equal is in Western society. If you look at the Muslim, if you look at even maybe like the Indian subcontinent, the Muslim woman is like completely backwards, and she viewed as backwards, or she's somebody who like will walk 10 steps behind a man, and she's got no rights, and she's somebody who her voice shouldn't be heard, and she should be hidden away in the back rooms of the house. Now the thing is, both of these situations are wrong. Yeah, for us, if we believe in Islam as a complete way of life, even the role of a woman then we have to take from Islam and not from our own mindset. Okay, so yes, in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has defined roles for a man and roles for a woman. So for a man, he is a provider because Allah has asked him to be a provider for womankind. Likewise, with a Muslim woman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given her the izzah and the honor of being a mother, a wife, a daughter. So she has that role. But does that mean that being a wife or being a mother or being a daughter means that you are now hidden in the back room? Does it mean that you are somebody who doesn't have a voice? Does it mean that you're not a part of society? Who defines this? Who decides this? And again, this is something we need to take back to Islam. Not only that, in Islam, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given certain role to a woman and certain roles to a man, there are a number of ayahs which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses to both men and to women. And one of those ayahs, there's a hadith, there are ayahs as well, but there's a hadith in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when he was addressing both the man and the woman, he said that you must command the good and forbid the evil, and hold fast the hand of the tyrant ruler and limit him to the truth. Now, if we're following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu